Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Well, good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing great, too, as well. I'm looking forward to today's show. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the movie God's Not Dead, the 2014 Christian drama. We will explore some of the arguments presented in the script and compare them to Kriya Yoga concepts employed at Institute for Personal Development. Also, we will be discussing the split between science and religion, not as an argument to be proven, but as a situation that must be corrected, using questions like, does it really matter what we believe in, or is spirituality simple physics? Well, Swami, I think that's a pretty good question to get started with. Why don't you answer that question for us?
Well, for me, yeah, spirituality is definitely simple physics. But getting back to the movie, it really seemed like the movie itself seemed to be more of an academic argument, trying to defend two theories, which to me didn't really have much scientific application to it. It didn't have an evidence procedure to it. It was just a lot of concepts that were supported with a lot of theories. And so it didn't have the same dynamic that my experience with Kriya Yoga is, that it's instruction to do something and it has an evidence procedure. It's not something you believe in and then have some sort of collective consensus to support whether you won or you lost.
Yeah, I like that. I know the movie did kind of fall short as far as maybe entertainment values, and it didn't get very good reviews, but however, it did provide a platform for us to raise some important points. When I was doing some research for the program, I went on Wikipedia, and the phrase God is dead was actually a phrase by a German philosopher, and it appears in his collection called The Gay Science that was back in 1882. And what he says is that, and this is in quotes, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderer of all murderers? And his view was that the Christian God is no longer a credible source of absolute moral principles. So it wasn't the fact that he was saying God was alive or God is dead. I think he was trying to say that we're kind of like our own worst enemies by if we don't uphold to our moral principles, then that is saying that we no longer have this faith in spirituality, this faith in God.
Yeah, which is, again, one of the reasons why, from my perspective, it seems like we're so upside down in our religions, period. You know, we base everything upon conduct, and we don't get the physics of spirituality, that it really is the connection to this life force that makes all of these virtues possible. And so you try and do it without the connection. It's one of the things we say. It's like trying to cut a tree down with a chainsaw without starting it up. And then, of course, arguing or saying that if you believe that it will happen, and then it becomes more semantics. Whereas the concept of God, I think the real question should be, what is God? And then from that, I want to say, vantage point, then you could start to see that it wasn't a person. You know, because one of the things that I like to observe is that science has evolved. Originally we thought the Earth was flat, and then eventually we decided that it was round, and now we've come to the conclusion that it's elliptical. So there has been this evolution in science. There's been these changes that have taken place based on observation, research, and facts. Our religions, on the other hand, have not had that same advancement. You don't see us moving from this limited concept of a belief system, because our religions now, they come under the heading of things like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, which in fact religion was a spiritual science in its original format. Now the problem is that we didn't really understand the texts with regard to its instruction to do something, to relink to a different source of sustenance. We started to just follow the text as a list of rules and regulations that we were supposed to uphold. And then, of course, we created this astral image that we call God. And then it becomes this collective consensus of whether you believe in a God, this person, or not. But on a fundamental level, religion to me, whether it's monistic or theistic, it's the same thing. It's just using a different word to point to a different source of sustenance. So as far as the movie was concerned, it really seemed like there was a lot of scientific theory that was presented, there was a lot of religious theory that was presented, but it seemed that it didn't come to any conclusion that was scientific or provable. It was just a matter of who won over the audience. And so as a result, it kind of fell short of my expectation on one level. The other level, to me, I saw the movie as more of a commercial for Christianity. You know, I mean, you're writing the script, and so therefore you can slant the information to do whatever it is that you want it to do. But I always go back to what Stephen Stills said in that song, if nobody's right, then everybody's wrong. And that's what I get from the movie, that it really starts nowhere, it goes nowhere. Doesn't really give you what I would consider to be a concrete answer that you could take away from that, plug your life into it, and everything's going to work.
I have a couple of questions for you about the movie itself. In particular, Josh, the main character, takes his philosophy class, and the whole class is told that they have to write on a piece of paper, God is dead. And if they don't write on the piece of paper, then they will have this opportunity to fail their class. So he's the only one that has this problem with writing that down. He's apparently this is strict Christian, and he has very strong beliefs. And like you were saying, he has to get the approval of the class to win this grade. Not only that, he has to have the final debate with the professor. On this final debate, he says to the professor, "Why do you hate God?" And then we kind of get some background story about the professor. Well, if you were one of the students that were sitting in that classroom, would you have a response to Josh and or the professor? And if so, what would that response be?
The response to, do I hate God?
Why do you hate God?
Why do you hate God? Yeah, I thought that part of the movie was actually clever. how all of a sudden, it kind of reminded me of that scene in, I forget that movie with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, where they were in the courtroom and, the one where you can't handle the truth kind of a thing. And he tricks him into admitting, that he performed these atrocities. And where he says that thing, how can you hate something that doesn't exist? Turns the whole thing upside down on him. And yeah, I like that kind of stuff. I think it's clever. But as far as how would I answer the question? How do you hate something that doesn't exist? It's a hard thing. I don't know how I would answer it. It doesn't really. It's stuff like that isn't important to me. The thing that I think would be important to me is to figure out what exactly is God, and then does it exist? That the existence of God is of the utmost importance, because God's not dead is, to me, is just a statement. But from my perspective and understanding of what God is the force that brings life to existence. And so without it, you can't have an argument. Without this life force, you don't have existence at all. Now, to me, that's not something that has to be proved. Mm-hmm. The simple fact that we're standing here and we are alive proves that God is present, because it is the force that supports life. And one of the things that we always talk about here is the problem with humanity isn't God's love for humanity. The problem with humanity is humanity's love for God. It's we don't know what it is, and we are dependent upon resources of energy that are producing undesirable states. And that's when it comes back to me that it's not an academic argument, it's physics.
Well, what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, because when I was also researching that phrase "God is dead," in that same article, I read the death of God is a way of saying that humans are no longer able to believe in any such cosmic order, since they themselves no longer recognize it. I thought that was pretty powerful. And then it went on to say the death of God will lead to the rejection of a belief or a cosmic order and to a rejection of values. Isn't that what we're just talking about? And the main character, Josh, had such this strong belief in his faith. And don't you say in other shows that belief is 80% of everything? If you believe something strong enough, that's really all we need. But it's that other 20% that we have to work on.
Well, to answer your questions, which is an awful lot, the concept of the death of God leading to the rejection of belief or cosmic order and to rejection of values, that's a really powerful statement, because one of the things that we say here, that God is an energy field that produces values that are in accordance with universal order. It's when the human identifies with this energy field, with this life force, we become virtuous by nature. And so that's the part that I don't really think that we have clarity about, that your religion was instruction in how to relink, how to connect to a different source of sustenance, to a different energy field that produced a different entity. And so without the physics of that, without the understanding of the experience of that, then it deteriorates into these arguments. It's just intellectualism. It's a lot of rules, it's a lot of theories, it's a lot of language, but it really starts nowhere and it goes nowhere. And so for me, the religion part was instruction for us to join with a different energy field, to become addicted to a different source of sustenance, to love this energy field with your heart, your soul, and your mind, or as the Buddhists say, to desire the void or the nothing. See, one of the things that they didn't go into at all in the movie were any of the discoveries that came from quantum physics. And to me, quantum physics proved mysticism with their discoveries. The whole thing of the Trinity, this mystery of life, that underlying matter is energy and underlying energy is the void. And your outcome, your fate, is going to be determined by what of those energy fields do you desire? What are you addicted to? And those are the things that, for me, have much more pragmatic application and is much easier to prove and also to actualize or experience, as opposed to all of this intellectualism.
I have a few more points to make about the movie, but I think we need to take this moment to pause to hear a word from our sponsors. So, listeners, we will be back with you shortly.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Kriya Yoga Theory 1 live classes and videos. Get your arms around the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga.
You know, the intention of why we practice is to embody spirit, to feel connected to the life force.
Kriya Yoga Asana live classes and videos. A cosmically engineered system of exercises to initiate apotheosis. A system of exercises engineered for dining and dancing at the Cosmic Ballroom. Kriya Yoga Theory 2 live classes and videos. A practice in open form designed to facilitate positive growth of consciousness. Get your Labyrinth video.
I find the positive side of it is it pulls a lot of things together.
Kriya Yoga Mantra and Meditation. With repetition comes absorption. Pray on prana and become divine.
At the same time, we all have a unique talent and gift to give back to the universe.
Private session. The mysteries of the universe have always been handed down verbally from teacher to student. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, there was a scene in the movie where a son visits his mother, and the mother has like Alzheimer's or some kind of dementia, so she's kind of in and out. And he says to her something to the effect of, well, look at you now, you know, you led your life a certain way, and where is your God now? And then she replies back to him, sometimes the devil allows people to live a life free of trouble because he doesn't want people turning to God. Their sin is like a jail cell, except it is all nice and comfy, and there doesn't seem to be any reason to leave. The door's wide open till one day time runs out, and the door slams shut, and suddenly it's too late to get out. I thought that was pretty powerful. I never thought of it like that the kind of success that this man had was because it was, quote, the devil at work.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole concept of temptation that they talk about in the Bible. And one of the reasons why this concept of the devil can tempt is because of our patterning, that we are drawn towards particles and waves, that the pull is very strong. And really, most of us, we are attached to the physical world from our own devices. It's not anything that's holding us there other than this pattern that we come in with. And that was what was referred to in the Bible as the original sin, that we look for food, mother, and approval for validation. And what we were supposed to be taught was how to separate from this attachment to these resources that were limiting, because we are in the realms of suffering and decay. And that's, again, von Goethe said, I think, the same thing that this woman said in a different way, that none are more hopelessly in prison than those who falsely believe that they're free. When we think that getting whatever we want is God's way of rewarding us, it's kind of like we're prisoners of our own device, because we haven't figured out that what the books are telling us to do, that we have to separate from our attachment to a resource of energy that's limiting and reconnect to a source of sustenance that is liberating. And without leadership, because one of the things that we notice and some of the people are talking about here on the Flash Chat is that our religions started to become corrupted. They started to manipulate the masses. They were using fear to help sell their services. And it really wasn't, or no longer is, the place where you go to find or learn about this experience of liberation, of freedom, or salvation, however you wanted to call it. But it is this resource of energy, this thing they called God, that made that possible. And it was humans' love for this energy field. But if you think God is a person, it falls into the realms of the astral realm. It's still dualistic. It's a resource of energy that will not produce the return that you're trying to get. It's like combustion engines run on gasoline. If you put water in them, they don't run. If you put apple juice in them, they don't run. If you put gasoline in them, they start up. Now, the human mind-body complex is not designed to run on particles or waves. It's designed to run on this tree of life, this life force, this indivisible unified field they call non-locality. And in order for us to go from a human being that runs on particles or waves, there had to be this conversion. We had to change some things internally. And that was where humans went to these communities to learn how to do this, because the benefits were enormous. Now, of course, in the movie, this whole thing of going to the concert, this kind of group dynamic is not the same as this internal connection with something that's pure, powerful, and sacred. you can get lost in the community. You can get lost in group dynamic.
I have another question for you from the movie. There's a saying that the pastor says throughout the movie, and it is, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. My understanding, of course, we just talked about, God is not a person, it's an energy field, but even besides that, it seems like he's putting God in a dualistic place, and God should be everything, good and evil, if you will, not necessarily just God is good all the time and all the time God is good. So I wanted to ask you a question about that. How would you respond to that?
Well, to me, God is unchanging. So, and not, again, the realms of the unified state is non-dualistic. So you don't have this interplay between good and bad. That's one of the reasons why they make statements like, don't make judgments, or there's nothing difficult about the Great Way, just stop having an opinion. That the Stoics were indifferent to good or bad. Mm-hmm. And the reason for this is that not because they're senselessly optimistic, but because they're drawing from the constant. They're drawing from a resource of energy that is neither good or bad. It's the unified field. If that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it really does. But if you were the one sitting in the classroom, would you have tried to convince the classroom that God is not dead?
Well, I would try to have convinced the people in the classroom that God was the force right now supporting your life. That God is your number one need, and it doesn't, and that would be the simple fact that you are alive is proof of the existence of this source of sustenance. Would have been more maybe the direction that I would have taken, as opposed to supporting some sort of concept of some cosmic puppeteer.
Also, my research, I came up with a phrase, and it says, Christianity provides a basis for living honestly and morally. Now, obviously, where I got that from was, like you say, a commercial for Christianity. After I read that, I decided I was going to put that in my notes because I wanted you to give us the Chinese proverb, because I think that says it all.
Well, first of all, I mean, Christianity doesn't have a, I want to say, they're not the only ones that are promoting this whole thing of virtue. All of the religions. It is our connection to this resource that makes us virtuous by nature. And that's the whole concept of the Chinese proverb. When there's light in the soul, there's beauty in the person. When there's beauty in the person, there's harmony in the home. When there's harmony in the home, there's honor in the nation. And when there's honor in the nation, there's peace in the world. But it really has to come from the inner peace that an individual experiences when they are connected to this source of sustenance. And that's what we teach in Kriya Yoga.
Well, thank you. It was a great show. I think it's time we got to start closing down our program, so please visit us on all the social media, and please help us get the word out. Click it, like it, share it. Help us change the world. That's what we need to do. But be sure, and next week we'll be discussing our Prana party. Everybody's invited, so BYOD, bring your own divinity. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into our program today. Any final thoughts, Swami?
Well, I'd just like to invite everybody to join us, and namaste.
Thank you for listening to the program. I am Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.